Hey, what up everybody, this is Stevie Breach coming to you with the very first of my guessing very many of the future WWE Network reviews. The first show that I went to and wanted to check out was one that honestly I didn't really have planned out. I signed in, that first menu screen popped up, and the world was at my fingertips. I really didn't know what to do. It's basically like if you signed into Netflix for the first time and you didn't really have a plan on what you were going to do, and there's all these movies just everywhere. I couldn't believe it. I went down to the recommended viewing, and there it was, Bash at the Beach, 1990, what year is this? 1996, the year of the nWo. Honestly, I thought that it was one of the very, the coolest things that I had ever really seen, ever really lived through. That everybody's trying to, capture the spirit of the nWo. And maybe you can say that DX might have been cooler, and DX might have been, the more hip thing to do with Triple H, doing it over with the New Age Outlaws and X-Pac. But to me, there was nothing more badass than the group of the nWo. I didn't get to live through the Horsemen with them, making sure that Flair kept the title and just beating the shit out of everybody, doing whatever they had to do whenever they had to do it. But I mean, when Scott Hall came out and he started that war, and then was followed by Kevin Nash, they went through, I think, 2 months of booking. I mean, because they had a pay-per-view before this one, the Great American Bash, where the Outsiders just came out and all they did was accept the challenge to fight at the next pay-per-view, and then they picked up Eric Bischoff and they did the big power slam off the stage through the table gimmick, and that was pretty badass. When I went to go back and watch this show, WCW, just much like WWE, even to today, they would always sort of try to sell the show to you, after you've already bought it. It's not like they were, produced to watch, years later like this is. But they would go over and relive and rehash the whole angle to get you all expressed into this. And the best thing about it is that they didn't use any words. They just played video clips of the nWo, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, the Outsiders, just wreaking havoc over everybody. And instead of having an announcer talk over what was going on, they flashed up these like fake newspaper titles to really get you involved in what was going on. And then they built up a team of, WCW, drawing the draw of who was going to go out there and who was going to fight these guys in order to do it. But when it all came down, basically the team of WCW came out, Randy Savage, Sting, and Lex Luger. And when they came down to show that they were sort of, in a different sort of state of mind, and that they were strong and together and they were going to fight the fight of WCW, they all came out wearing Sting, makeup. They were all wearing like a gimmick face paint. They all were wearing different colors to sort of like show off the different faces of Sting. But it was Savage, Sting, and Luger. And basically, when the nWo came out, it was just Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. They didn't have a third man. Mean Gene immediately was bewildered at what was going on, ran down to the ring to get an interview with the Outsiders before this whole thing started. And basically, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall told them that they had enough right here, and that they already know too much. And they said the third man was there, and that basically, let's get it on. We're going to start this 3-on-2, and if we need the third man will come out. But they were pretty confident they were going to be able to win. This match wasn't going but for more than 2-3 minutes once it got started. And Sting, we did a big stinger splash into the corner because Lex Luger and Kevin Nash were fighting in the corner on the outside. And when Stinger did the stinger splash, he landed on Kevin Nash, who immediately sort of sprung Lex Luger's head, who was in his hands, right into the side turnbuckle. Lex Luger went down like a sack of bricks, and basically they carted him out on a stretcher, and they were making it played out like he had hurt his neck, like maybe he was paralyzed, and it immediately went down to a 2-on-2 match. Randy Savage and Sting against Kevin Nash and Scott Hall. These guys fought back and forth, and it's funny to listen to Shivani, Dusty Rhodes, and Bobby Heenan all playing babyface on the thing, basically playing this up like, this isn't a normal fight. This isn't, this is war. And most of the time, Bobby Heenan, he'll join in on the heel side, and Schiavone will play it safe, but root for the baby faces to show you who's the guy to go with. But they were flat out saying, we're Team WCW. We're not going to call this match like a normal match. Don't be looking at us, and calling us biased, because we are. We're fighting for our life here, because they thought that if maybe the nWo took over, that they would be fired, they wouldn't have jobs anymore, so you got to root for it. And Schiavone's pretty much saying that there are no rules to this match. There was a random drawing to see who the 3 guys that fought for WCW were, and just basically said anybody out of the locker room should come out right now. Which nobody came out, and Dusty Rhodes is out there, and he's on the team. Dusty Rhodes had been retired. He hadn't had a match in a while, but, they always played up Dusty Rhodes to be like, sort of like Larry Zbyszko, where if, some scrap went down, Dusty would be able to take care of himself, because he's fucking Dusty Rhodes, and Dusty's cheering for somebody else to come out. If you want somebody else to get in this match so bad, why don't you get your fat ass out there and help WCW out? But basically, in my mind, looking back on it, they make the whole WCW locker room look like they don't really give a shit on what's going on out there. Of course, as everybody knows, the shit goes down in the ring. Hogan comes out from the back, and out of nowhere, Bobby Heenan, I don't know from air or what, says, but whose side is he on? Why would you think he's on anybody else's side? He's wearing the red and yellow. He basically ruined the whole thing, and he's sort of pointed his finger at Schiavone, saying Schiavone was the guy who knew everything was going down, and he hid the booking sheet and didn't let Heenan into the booking room to know what was going on. So he's always played innocent, saying that he didn't know what was going down. So he was being his heel self, trying to make Hogan look bad when Hogan was about to come down and make everybody the savior. But everybody knows he dropped the leg drop on Randy. Of course, there was no 3 count. The match was immediately stopped. Basically, the referee just hightailed it out of there. Fans started throwing trash in the ring like there was no tomorrow. I don't know if this was spontaneous, if maybe WCW, had some plants in the crowd that sort of started it, and everybody followed in, but nobody wanted to listen to anything that Hulk Hogan would say. Everybody booed him out of the building. I can remember watching this show, and this was so big. This was almost like the Nexus thing was in 2010 for me. I remember doing the same thing with that. I watched it live, and then because we had the box, I watched it on tape again that same night. And then I remember my dad coming in the next day, and I was sitting in the living room and I was watching Nitro, and he didn't really understand. He's always sort of been okay with me watching wrestling, but I can tell when he walks out of the room sometimes he shakes and scratches his head whatever, because of how much wrestling I really like to watch, even to today. When he sometimes he'll pick me up from the airport when I go on trips like the Bound for Glory or WrestleMania, and he always asks me what I did, and I tell him because I'm so pumped up about the matches and shit like that, and he's always like, "But did you do anything else?" And I'm like, "No, Dad, it's wrestling. That's what it's all about." But anyways, he walked in the room. I was watching Nitro, and he's like, "You're watching this again?" Because he thought I was watching it for a 3rd time, and I'm like, "No, it's the nWo, baby. It's the hottest thing going today." And we all know that the nWo probably went on way too long. I don't think that it really was the death of WCW. I think that they went back to it too many times because they were scared of how much it worked and thinking that it would work again when they just sort of been dead and buried and said whatever. But you got you had the nWo, you had the nWo Wolfpack, you had the nWo B Team, you had Team Hollywood, you had freaking LWO. You had nWo 2000, you had nWo... Is nWo Silver and nWo 2000 the same? I think they're the same. And then, of course, they went back to WB. But, I mean, this is honestly... It wasn't on my top 5 WCW matches to watch, but this was a fucking awesome match. You guys should go back and watch this pay-per-view. At least watch the beginning when it sets the tone of what's going down, and then go all the way to the end. I can tell by looking on Twitter, a lot of people are just sort of skipping around, watching big matches from certain things. So I would like it if, with the network, they would go in and they would sort of put up, sort of like chapters or match selections. Let me know what you guys are watching. This is my first review. It's one I've only watched one show. I've watched just pieces of other things. So we'll see. I want to know what you're watching. I want to know like why you watched it. Make some videos about what you're watching on the network because I care. Peace out.